I'm very excited today to be talking about our two newly released apps, Accelerate and Venture. Now, as Matt and Genevieve presented yesterday, we've released these two apps to help companies build their innovation ecosystem outside of their organization. And these two apps are focused to connect companies with high-profile startups, as well as the overall startup ecosystem. Now, these two innovation activities help bring a lot of huge growth opportunities to the business, as well as change brand positioning to transform your organization to an innovation leader. Now, before I present those two apps, I did want to show you or talk about two terms that were coined to describe very different companies. And that is unicorns and prunes. So you might be asking if this is a right workshop. It is, I promise. There's a logic to this. Now let me explain why. In 2013, Aileen Lee, a venture capitalist, termed the coin unicorn to describe a privately held company worth $1 billion plus in market cap to show how rare those companies are. Now, on the other side, Prunes was termed by Lou Kerner, who is a investment partner. And he termed that coin during a TED Talk about corporate accelerators that I highly recommend. But he used that term to describe the biggest disruptees. So companies in the Fortune 500 that, mostly due to a lack of innovation, have fallen outside of the Fortune 500. Well, today's workshop is about how we can help enterprise organizations not become prunes. So two innovation activities that show huge potentials in what better way for an organization to face disruption and to anticipate disruption, as well as generate new growth opportunities, than to embrace the startup ecosystem. And the two innovation activities that we're going to talk about today are corporate accelerators and corporate venture capital. Who in this room knows of their company running a corporate accelerator or a corporate venture capital? Raise their hands. Okay. Fair amount. So in today's presentation, hopefully, we'll show you how Bright Idea can help and provide the tools to help those teams run those programs more effectively, drive more value to the business, and therefore, as part of an innovation program, drive additional value because you have additional services to sell to the company. For those that haven't heard about it, maybe you guys have it and are still, you can research it, and hopefully this makes sense and you could potentially start implementing that in the company. Now, I do want to point out that we at Bright Idea aren't here to set up your corporate accelerator or corporate venture fund, but we do have we do believe that the software out there will help make it more successful and provide more value to the business. The structure I want to follow in today's presentation is to first start with a 101 overview of what those two innovation activities are. And then we'll spend more time inside the software and showing exactly how Bright Idea can help support those. So the first innovation activity that I want to talk about, are corporate accelerators. So the accelerator model was created by Y Combinator in 2005. And since then, a lot of traditional accelerators have followed their path. And starting in 2010, corporations and enterprise corporations starting adopting that model. And since then, the number of corporate accelerators has exploded. And just to give you some numbers, between 2015 and 2016, 55% of new corporate innovation centers were corporate accelerators. And as of 2017, we're counting 70 plus active corporate accelerator in the world. So huge growth there. What exactly is a corporate accelerator? It is a physical location that serves as a startup ecosystem. It's a fixed-term cohort-based program, typically classes of 5 to 10 startups, and can last all between 3 to 6 months. There's a mentorship as well as educational components to it, and startups usually present at a demo day their idea. And the primary value of a corporate accelerator is that it provides a window to the startup ecosystem for those corporations. So corporations are able to build and cultivate relationships with entrepreneurs, investors, and start tracking new insights on key areas in their sector. And the goal of the accelerator is to generate new growth inside their existing businesses or just new areas of business. It can be considered as a iterative and cost-efficient R&D because instead of allocating the resource in your classical R&D structure, you have those startups that apply the lean startup principles and can test those for you, and you've just had a small equity in them. But don't take our word for that. Here are some of the logos of companies that have active corporate accelerators in them. Some of them are already Bright Idea clients. But to make this slide a bit more relatable, I wanted to share a success story of the Coca-Cola corporate accelerator. So basically, one of their startup that participated in the program called Vending Analytics, Coca-Cola became their first customer. And their product was optimization of stocking using analytics. And it generated a 20% increase in revenue per vending machine for Coca-Cola. So you can imagine huge return on the initial investment in the startup in the program. So now this is the one-on-one overview for corporate accelerators. I want to switch gears and talk about corporate VC or CVC. And start off with some numbers as well. So from 2012 to 2017, the number of global active corporate VC has tripled to 262. In the first half of 2017, there has been 102 new CVC teams created, which totals up the number of CVC teams created last year. So huge momentum as well. If I define a corporate VC, it is an independent arm of your company or a designated investment team, and they work off the balance sheet, and that's actually important. And the goal is to invest, it's kind of similarly to any institutional VC, is to invest in external high-growth companies that drive value to the company. Now, value can be defined multiple ways in those investments. So while financial returns are a great perk, they're not the only success criteria to see whether or not an investment was right. And typically, they're linked to strategic goals and whether or not it's to build your existing or expand on your existing businesses or create new ones, new opportunities for you. There's typically a strategic component to it. And also, it allows to create exposure to markets outside its core, gather that information, feed it inside your business, and again, use that startup ecosystem to make sure you're not disrupted. So examples of of an outcome could be an acquisition target, or creating a new partner, or OEM partner, and any product integration that would drive sales to for the investing company. So there are different ways to invest for a CVC team, corporate venture capital. I won't dive into this too much, but this is a framework created by American professor Henry Chesbrough. Side note, he's actually the person that coined the term open innovation. And in this framework, he basically categorizes each investment using two criteria: the objective of it, whether it's strategic or financial, as well as the link to operational capability, whether it's tightly aligned, so you share a lot of information and infrastructures, or if it's loosely. And I highlighted the three that have the highest chances of being successful because they always have an outcome tied to them, even if for some reason the financial investment crashes. And just to give you some examples of some, if I were to talk about the driving one, which is a strategic objective as well as a tight link to operational capability, that could be promoting a standard. So you own or you're backing a standard, a tech standard, for instance, and you want to invest in companies that are using that standard, so you can win that market. The other one, the enabling, where it's still strategic but loosely, that could be investing in in companies that are complementary to your product and therefore driving more sales into your business. And then the other one I wanted to talk about is the emergent one, which is very focused on financial, but still tightly linked to the operational capability. And in this example, it's more like trying to invest in companies that are outside of your core. You don't have expertise in that area. It might be a totally new market, and you're basically getting insights from that company that already has market and deciding whether or not it's a good time to make a shift potentially. And that's why the passive one is not the best recommendation, because whatever happens in the emergent, you're always learning something. So whatever happens to your investment, there's still a lot of value in decided that market might not be a good fit or it doesn't have the right sizing as of now. Versus passive, if your financial investments crashes, then you have nothing to show for. But again, don't take our word for that. There's many corporate VCs now in existence. A lot of them are our clients on this slide. And to talk about a success story, another one, I wanted to bring in talk about our GM Ventures. In 2016, GM Ventures invested in Lyft, a total of $500 million, which is a pretty hefty investment. And the goal is to share their driverless information with the ride sharing and route calculation algorithm from Lyft to create a network of driverless car on demand. So that's the end goal. Now, little quiz for you guys. If we go back to our slide, if considering that this investment is highly strategical and is tightly linked to the operation since you're sharing information and trying to make a product together, what type of investment is that? Driving. GM, driving, Lyft, you get it. I don't think they did that on purpose, though. So, perfect. So I did. I think right now we've finished our 101 overview class. We'll have a Q&A session at the end. So in any area you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And we've seen that those innovation activities are tracking inside the corporation world, but if not done correctly or if not run efficiently, might not bring the value that you expect from them. So this is where, and there aren't many tools out there to support those teams right now. That is until yesterday. You now have the Accelerate and Venture apps. And the whole purpose of these apps is they're highly focused to make sure that those teams have the tools to drive more value and more outcomes from it. So in the case of the corporate accelerator, our goal at Bright Idea is to provide the tools to help the teams increase the rate on follow-on funding. So after the program ends, you have more companies that you've invested in your following in. And then the venture, and you'll see it provides a centralized deal flow process, management process. The goal is to reduce the effort from the corporate VC team in managing that deal flow, and in turn, helping the partners focus on the right investment opportunities. So let's start with Accelerate. The Accelerate app is designed to enforce disciplined execution and development by external startup in the Accelerator program, as well as to enable the disciplined management of the startups in the Accelerator class. Let's see what that process looks like. So before I dive into the software, I did want to kind of visualize what the Accelerator process looks like. I'll dive a bit deeper into each stage inside the software. But this pretty much is it. You would have selected your classes or your startup, sorry, that will participate in your Accelerator class. You kick off the program, the startups register, they get familiarized with the process, the different phases. In this case, it'll be the software as well. And then the main focus of the program, obviously, is the startup development. And that can range, we'll explain a bit later. It varies depending on the maturity of the startup. And then there's a big emphasis also on the presentation development, because you want to make sure the quality is on par with the high-profile people that are during demo day. So this is usually external VCs, maybe C-levels inside the company that are reviewing the presentations from the different startups. And after that demo day, the program's done. So companies, startups join the alumni program, and there is a support and monitoring of the investment, because typically there's a small equity investment in exchange for a share of the company, and you would be able to track any potential exits, positive exits, IPO, whatnot. So, demo time. I'm gonna switch to my browser. Okay. I'm so used to asking like whether or not you can see my screen, but there it is. I can look behind me. Okay. Yeah. So if that's a good point, Matt. Thanks. If you guys have any questions on the overview, I'm happy to answer them. Just FYI, this mic is for the video. So if you don't hear yourself, it's normal, but it's necessary, because if not, we won't be able to hear the question. So any initial questions on the kind of 101 overview of corporate accelerators and corporate venture capital?
Great question, Alex.
So wait until the mic comes over. I might repeat that if it's not loud enough, FYI.
All right, sure, no problem. What's the starting point you're envisioning here? When we click on register team, are you starting at a point of they're already selected for the accelerator, or they're submitting a proposal?
Yep. So just in case you haven't heard it, the question was, what step are you starting from with the app? Is it an application process where any startup can apply to the program, or have you already decided on the selected or your startups that are actually going to participate? So the Accelerate app is the latter one. So the startups will have already been selected, and you basically would invite them to this page to register their team and like start getting all the content for the program. Now that doesn't mean you can't use Bright Idea for the application process. What typically happens is that if you look at any of the live corporate accelerators, they already have on their website an area for their accelerator program. So the application process could be done on their own website. But Bright Idea could support that. You could have a public initiative configured to invite anybody, give that information on your accelerator, have an evaluation process to select the startups you want to join. But that would be, and then it could feed into the Accelerate app. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Nice. No worries. Sorry.
Yeah, just to clarify one more point, Alex, so you said you can actually, via this, once you've selected the startups, you can invite them in and they can participate in this space?
Yes.
Cool.
So, and that's actually one of the value props from this app, which I'll walk through.
Okay. Yeah, and maybe not right now, but I think so. Understanding the security and permissioning and who can have access to what parts of this, I think I'd like to really understand that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? Mostly corporate accelerator, not CVC. Cool. So we're back to the demo. This is our. So we would have selected the startups, and we would invite them to register. And this basically provides obviously content on the different phases of the process, but a collaborative workspace or space for the startups to start executing on their development. So I'm actually just going to switch to the back. Oh, not having tabs is not the easiest. I'll go back to the front end and show. I know maybe some of you have already seen the team workspace where people can work on their business model canvas, etc. But I did want to walk you through the process, which is a bit more specific than the overview I gave you. So the way that's the out-of-the-box pipeline created via the Accelerate app. Teams would register, and you would typically have your Accelerator admin verify that all the information is inputted and starts opening access to the team workspace, which I'll go in a bit. Then the kickoff of the program happens, triggers an action item to the team leader. They get information on how the software works, maybe additional inputs on the program. And they have also a role. I mean, you start networking to find the mentors and add them to your team. After that, you have the startup development phase. So we've created 3 of them. They basically trigger throughout the developments of or the ongoing of your process, your program. Startups will work on developing their ideas. And that's where it really depends on the maturity of your startup or where you are and what your objectives are. Some companies might work on their business model. Some others might try to acquire a new client. Some others might want to add new features to their product. Or it could be a combination of all. But the whole point of this is that throughout the program you get checkpoints with your mentors and the Accelerate team to make sure that you get that mentorship to improve your idea. And so that happens in meeting forms, and you can capture those notes throughout the process in order to have to be able to go back to them and see the evolution throughout the program. So let me actually go back to the front end. Yeah, there we go. To the team workspace. So this is a startup, Artemis Fresh. That sounds familiar. Sorry, but they've registered. That's their startup page, and most importantly, after being permitted access to the team workspace, they will have all the teams inputted here, and all of them can share their tasks and milestones. So that's the easy part. Throughout your different stages with your mentors, you can decide on a program on how to develop your business. But the nice thing is, helping the startups focus on their riskiest assumptions. So we want to apply Lean Startup through the entire program, and this is where the business model as well as the riskiest assumptions tabs will be very useful for them. They can work on defining the different boxes of the business model canvas, whether it's the value proposition, the customer segments. They can work with our mentors to define that. And for each of those boxes, you would have a riskiest assumption tied to it. And that's what you want to work on during the development process. You want to make sure you have those answered, whether it's viable or not, to define your whole business model. And then, the whole integration, box integration. So hopefully, this area will provide a way for the teams to collaboratively move forward on the submission, and the Accelerator program is able to capture that data. Back to the process. After a few months, right, depending on the length of your program, people will have to start working on their presentation. That's the high point of the program, is the demo day. So they pitch to external VCs as well as C-level executives. And in those 2 steps, you basically have presentation reviews, so different checklists that happen to make sure that the quality is there, and any feedback incorporated in making sure that that presentation it has the sufficient quality. And to finish, they would go, you have a first review demo day checklist. Joseph showed that yesterday. It's through our research through different accelerators. We just want to make sure that the teams have checked all the boxes before they make that presentation. Demo day comes along. They demo their products, their whole idea, their service. And after they network with potential investors. So again, the whole startup ecosystem shows up for that day and is very valuable also for corporations because they're able to commingle together. After that demo day, you have a final meeting, track all those notes for the startup, and the program ends. So you say thank you to the startups participating. They join your alumni network, which is actually very important and can help growing their startup. And you would monitor and support these startups. So based on the equity that you got from it, you have access to the board, and you can potentially help them with your your industry knowledge and record any potential exits from it. And this is it. This is the Accelerate app. So it is designed to provide a collaborative front-end space for the different startups to develop their ideas, as well as a structured process in the back end to help the teams manage more effectively the overall program and hopefully drive more follow-on fundings at the end. Any questions on? Yes. Good, Greg.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So, if I understand the collaboration space, is it per idea, right? So, if as the company's registered kind of as an idea, there's a collaboration space purely for that company and you.
Yes.
And they can't obviously see anybody else's stuff, right?
Yeah, this area, good question. So this area would be, so every submission, which is a startup in this case, would have an access to the team workspace, the button on the top. And this would only be accessible by the team members as well as administrators. So that's why part of the registration process also includes adding the team members, because that's when you're officially opening up that space for them.
Okay. And then in terms of the information there, is there any thoughts of linking it to Crunchbase, for example, and being able to auto-pull in all of the info on the different companies to save the effort of putting it in there?
I mean, it's the startup is inputting that, so
right.
I get what you're saying. I don't think it's that much effort to fill out a few fields or do copy-paste, but that could be a potential enhancement.
And then in general, like some of these kind of activities, they become pretty strategic, and they can, turn over into like an M&A kind of activity, right? You can look at some of these companies and you might want to buy them. Are there ways to really lock this down? Because you've got, bunches of different challenges and running via different apps. You've got your whole sort of front end of your tool, but this stuff could be very proprietary. So I'm kind of curious how much you can lock it down, even from maybe other system admins and stuff like that.
Oh, that might be tricky. So to repeat the question, in case you didn't hear, the question was about the user access or the restriction of this site, since it's an external initiative. You have external people logging into your system versus the other internal initiatives you don't want them to have access to. So that's currently doable inside Bright Idea. You would basically, not to go too deep, but the easiest would be to domain restrict your enterprise level to your corporate emails, which would lock down that side of things. And then typically you also have user groups for your different internal initiatives. So you could they should already be locked out for the external users, and so this isn't a public initiative, right? It's an external one. So you're inputting who should have access to it. So it's kind of already locked down. Now the other question around how can I avoid certain system administrators to have access to that? Currently, I don't think that's possible, but I also don't think that it would be necessary. I think this actually, you should be able to share that information internally. You're promoting an aspect of your innovation program.
Yeah, I think that there are some cases where like we would do something similar to this, and everyone involved in it has to sign off on NDAs and this kind of thing. So we really want to lock it down to a very limited group. And some of the people doing the system admin, they're absolutely not at the level that we would want to even see some of this stuff. So it's just one consideration.
That's a consideration. We have the product team also in the room, so
sure.
Good point.
Right.
Now,
Thank you.
If it was external, potentially you might have an additional affiliate to be doing this as well. If this would be, so it might even, you'd be running these externally facings potentially on another affiliate. Some clients might do it that way as well.
That's true. I would always recommend doing everything in the same affiliate, but you could have a different one.
Okay. Thanks.
No worries. Other questions? Yeah. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you. Going back to the pipeline, I was wondering if the triggers to move between columns in the pipeline are automated, or if that's something that the system admin is doing manually just as a tracking mechanism. And then I have a second question on the front end part. how you are documenting insights from customer discovery and kind of those aha moments that teams are documenting or reaching. When you're just marking a critical assumption as resolved, is there any kind of documentation associated with that, or the ability to associate information with that?
Yeah, good question. So, 2 questions. The first one was about automating the process in the back end, whether or not startups or the boxes move, basically, depending on the completion of the different action items. And the second one was around, it was around the attachments. So making sure, or adding the information to validate or not a riskiest assumption, for instance. So for the first one, we don't really, well, there's only one that would say like auto advances is the register team. It uses our review tool, which allows the administrator to quickly review, check all the information, add the teams to the team workspace, hit the review button, and it auto advances to the next step. For the rest of the process, there isn't any automation created out of the box. Now you can add it. I think the main reason is because every program kind of differs. Those steps are like placeholders and could have different. If I go to the review first meeting, maybe you only have 2 meetings. I don't know, or maybe 5. Now it doesn't mean you can't add that to your. If it makes the whole process easier and it's repeatable, then I would recommend potentially using the rules engine. But out of the box, there isn't any rules set up there. It would just make it a bit more complicated, I think. And to answer your question on providing proof, user research or client calling different potential clients, you would be able to either attach anything to your submission, or maybe use the box integration. If I go back to the files here, so you can add. Let's click. You could basically, you could attach those files directly inside your team workspace. So those would be the 2 avenues I would recommend. You could also use the development tool that requests to attach certain files in the process. That could be another way to do it. But yeah, hopefully everything. That's the whole point, is that you would have all the proof, all the information, and put it in a single area, so you can validate what's those riskiest assumption, for instance. Other questions?
Sorry, I'm kind of blocked by a giant column here, but so I know one of the things that a lot of startup accelerators value is that peer-to-peer network of the startups in there. They really push for them to discuss with each other on, say, a weekly basis what their problems are to help each other. Is there any thought to putting into this kind of, with that Slack integration, to be able to have a open space for all the startups to collaborate with? Would that be possible?
Yes, and I think, I would highly recommend that. I think that what comes out of the box is point on. The homepage basically, allow every startup will have access to the other startups. So you could use the commenting area to share that collaboration. Maybe if you wanted to do inside Bright Idea, you could use the Bright Idea integration to notify also on the activity. But the whole point is, you have your own, as a startup, you have your own workspace to work on your startup. But then you can see everybody else's, and potentially, while you have a live conversation, you could, proof or save that information as a comment on the submission and keep that track. But yeah, that's a good point. Does that answer your question? Do you want? Okay.
One other thing, on the team space, which is a submission within the initiative, we will also have visibility. Each team will have visibility into how far along each of their peers have advanced. So, for instance, one of the early steps is to find mentors, right? And that can actually be a fairly involved, long process, right? There's a lot of networking, a lot of events to establish a rapport, a relationship with somebody that you trust internally, right? So if you see that your peers have found mentors and they're already moving into development, that can be a strong incentive for you to maybe make more of an effort, right? So we're trying to foster some of that natural competitiveness as well and accountability. But we're certainly we have that in mind as developing.
Other questions? If not, I can move on. We've walked through the Accelerate app. Now let's go to the Venture one. The way it was designed was to provide, the Venture app was designed to provide a structured process for managing the deal flow and uncover promising leads and potential targets via different sourcing avenues. So same for the Accelerate. I just wanted to give a visual of what a deal flow management is for corporates VCs. So deals or investment opportunities are sourced typically using the partners network, but we're adding a new way of sourcing, hence crowdsourcing, to tap into your employee base in order to get potential target investments. From this sourcing comes an evaluation phase. You want to make sure that this is actually a startup you potentially want to invest in or is ready for investments. So we'll see different tools to facilitate that evaluation. And then if you decide that it is actually a good fit, it's a strategic alignment, back to the 4 ways of investing, you can start the conversation on or you can conduct the due diligence and negotiate a term sheet. You have the legal due diligence as well. And once the deal is signed, you want to make sure you track that investment. That's a lot of money, so you can use our business impact tab in order to get the results or track the results, the outcomes generated from your initial investment. And obviously the nice thing would be to get a positive exit, IPO, acquisition, whatnot, to get that financial return on top of that. So let's walk through the software. Okay, nice. So this is the venture, or our Artemis Financials venture fund. And as I mentioned, I'm not. Okay, that's a real one. That's not a screenshot. We're now, this front end allows you to crowdsource your employee base to get new venture opportunities. So on top of your normal partners networks, you can tap. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge and people know a lot of people. So hopefully that expands the different venture opportunities in your business. But you can use this page also to communicate internally what areas of focus you're investing in, the companies you're backing, as a way to promote your program. If I switch to the pipeline, this is the step-by-step process out of the box from our venture app. So the sourcing, as I mentioned, you would be able to create a centralized deal flow capture from your partners so they can input their own investment opportunities or ask the crowd to do that. And you would have a corporate venture capital administrator review that all the information inputted is accurate. And then it moves on to the partner, so it goes over to the screen opportunities. Typically, I mean, right now it's configured to have a category assignments, so depending on the area of that startup or the industry, you have different partners that are specialized in that. They will receive their scorecard, specific scorecard, and will be able to review or ask the initial questions. And I should have that open somewhere. I do not. Let me just show you what those questions look like, because I think that's valuable. Their overall score, but the investment requested. You can have, so this is a quick way for you to screen the investments and get an initial sense of that. So the investment requested could be large, medium, or small. The investment's suitability, the market sector, product attractiveness. So all these obviously can be configured, but they're right here as a template to start working on it. If the startup is decided viable, you would then conduct a first meeting. So the partner would typically fly over to the startup or have them come over to their headquarters and start filling out additional information on that startup. Conduct follow-on meetings. There's multiple, obviously, since those are big investments, you want to make sure that you have as much information before you conduct the the due diligence. You present to your partner meeting, so the whole board or the entirety of the partners will be there, and you start describing exactly the type of investment that could happen from it and the value that you could get from it. And then you would conduct a due diligence. So due diligence vary from company to company, so it's more as a placeholder step right here, but it includes making sure that's it's the right market fits and it's the right fit for the company. You would have a negotiation of terms between the startup and and your company, and then conduct the legal diligence to make sure that those terms are accurate or for the business. And the deal's done. So hopefully the deal's done if it's a good investment. And you would monitor and support that investment. Obviously, it's a big chunk of money most of the time, and you have a place on the your board members, so you can help again with your knowledge of the industry, help those startups grow, get some information from them, feed them back to your company, and hopefully learn from that, and track any potential exits. If I go to the front end just to show you, the different ways you could promote the corporate venture capital program, I think one good way, a great way that was added is our ability to filter on investment to dates. So you could filter that amount and only see the startups that you've invested in. And people can share their contacts. There's a, oops, not showing anything. There's also a way, one big hurdle that CVC teams typically have is the communication internally. So by having this centralized, by having this online, you allow to have people informed around the different investments. So we're using obviously the subscribe button. Any member of the company could receive updates on that investment, and hopefully use that commenting area also to share their feedback on it or potential context that they might have. So back to the business impact tab. There are ways to track your investments as well as the actual returns from your investments. So this is a simplified version, but say your investment was 100 million in a company, I would set up as an actual for the year I invested it in, and then if an IPO happened or an acquisition was made and you made, in this example, 5 times that amount, you could track it up and it will all roll up in our different ROI dashboards that you can also share to executives. So this would be a good recap, financially at least. Obviously, you would have all the strategic values that I described, all this information you would get from the investments, but you could share that visually to your executives. Question?
On the back end in the pipeline,
Yes.
do you guys, other than the team workspace, do you have any new tools within the actual when you go to configure those steps that we should know about?
You mean like tool types in the backend? Mm-hmm. We do not.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's going to be either the same things that we're familiar with that we've done before, or probably the big addition would be the team workspace where you would track activity or risk or create the business model canvas. Because I'm just looking at all these and I'm wondering if there are things when you dive into them, like what is actually happening. Maybe I'm going too deep, but...
No, but that's the whole point of the program too. But just to answer your question though, team workspace I don't think is as relevant for. I mean, it could be actually for venture, because you could have your partners track all their work inside that area.
I think we would use it that way.
Yeah, that makes sense, and you could conduct the due diligence in the form of tasks inside. I think as far as the due diligence, for instance, since it's so dependent on the company, like you have to, once you've set up those criteria, you can input them inside Bright Idea, but I don't think there's. So yeah, are you asking whether or not we can help with the different information collections for the due diligence? Is that your question? Am I rephrasing that correctly?
No, I'm just wondering more like when you get into each step.
Yes.
Like what are the actual tools that you're using to move them forward? Or is it literally like a drag and drop once you've done activities outside?
Yeah. To be fair, I would say it's a drag and drop because of the nature of it. Like we can't really formalize that process for every company.
No, I agree. I just wanted to make sure I understood like what the
And
process
this
flow.
like, most of the corporate venture capital teams don't have a process to map to. So it's already like a big step up to be able to show exactly where the investments are. Between the partners as well as share externally, so that you know what the team's doing.
Now, is there easy ways on these to connect to Box and Slack?
There all are. So all of our features are available across all the apps.
Okay.
Across the system. So you would have the Slack and the Box integration for those.
Okay.
Yep. Thanks. Other questions?
Thank you again. I am curious about the dashboards at the kind of at the enterprise level and how you delineate between what's going on in your accelerator and tracking that and showing those results versus what's going on your crowdsourcing idea challenges and your engagement. Because they seem like very different. They are, we treat them as different activities and would like to be able to report on them differently. So can you talk about how the dashboards are delineated between those?
So the question is, how do we delineate the different innovation activities in our enterprise dashboards across the program? I kind of want to say the whole point of the enterprise dashboards is to be able to aggregate all of them. Not really. I mean, obviously you would delineate because you have information on the different activities, but overall, the whole purpose is to show the level of engagements, the number of innovation submission collected, the return on investment, so the projected value and benefits collected. If you want to go more granular, you still have access to the pipeline dashboard, so you have all that information at that level. So I think it would be at that point comparing side by side those pipeline dashboards to maybe be a bit more specific on those. No worries. And just to the ROI, the one I was on, this is one of the dashboards available at the pipeline level. So if I were to go in engagement, this is the engagement specific to this activity. So at the high level, you should be able to get information on which activity you got the most engagement from or generated the most revenue or outcomes from. And then you can go a bit deeper inside this dashboard to get that information. Other questions?
All right, Alex, so on the team collaboration space on files, right? So I see there's integration with Box. My company does use Box, so it's great. But let's say if we move away from Box, would it still work, or is it just strictly for Box? Would it work with share, point, share drive, anything like that?
So currently, and I'm trying to find the tab. Currently, it's only on Box. The integration is only on Box. That doesn't mean we're not going to add any other integrations. And again, we have the product team in the room. But I think I'm actually unsure what criteria were used to select Box versus something else. But I do believe that ideally we would support any file system that any company uses to have that single system of record.
Right. And if I could just add. So in the settings tab where you set up your Box integration, you could actually also choose to have just native file hosting right on Bright Idea in case you just want it available on this team workspace itself and not integrated with a third party. So that's also an option, and that's configurable on a project by project basis in case maybe you want kind of a little bit more security and you want it just available for this one project and not sitting in a third AWS hosted thing. So
other questions? No? So conclusion, hopefully via those two apps and this overview of those two innovation activities, you've seen the potential of innovation ecosystems, open innovation, tapping into the external startup ecosystem to feed new ideas get new growth opportunities or new growth avenues, anticipate disruption. But this is just the beginning. Like there's other activities that are linked to open innovation, such as public challenges, public hackathons, and hopefully this is getting you excited on that whole new space that is opening up for enterprise companies to really commingle with external people and getting that additional creativity. So also, these slides will be available for you. So if you wanted to share those internally or start having a discussion with the existing teams or potentially to create a new one, you can use those as you wish, and we're more than happy to join that conversation if it helps. But just to finish off on the other note is, back to the prune analogy, make sure you ride that unicorn and don't be a prune. So. I guess we've done like a Q&A session, so we're good to go.